the first presentation is probably going to take the longest. The way you'll see how I've framed it. I've tried to frame it not just about what happened during August, and then also, we had elections in August and then back in March, and then we're now looking forward to the 2026 elections. And there's definitely a lot of, there's a lot that we, the effort we put into trying to mobilize the vote for the municipal elections is really helping us have a clearer vision of where we need to go for the next year. But we've got a lot of work to do, because you'll see in the turnout, results that, we really do need to think about how else can we mobilize people to show up and vote, because there's a real disconnect in low voter turnout for municipals is always less than midterms and the presidential election years. But, this coming year, we really need to get people to show up. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to start here. And like I said, I'm not sure what screen do you guys see? Because right now I can see you guys, but I can see like 2 slides. Are you able to? Are you seeing 1 or 2?
2. We see data-driven. We see the title slide, and then I guess the next slide.
Well, and that's okay, but that's okay, I guess, but wasn't what I planned. All right, it doesn't matter. You'll see it in just a minute when I do it. Before I get started, Judy, I'm going to put you on as co-host, so you can, if you would help me. I can find you on here. I guess it somehow updated my. Okay. All right. So here we go. So as I started going through and looking at, how can we use what we've learned to get ready for next year, it really kind of looks more like a data-driven. We're trying to understand where we've been to figure out where we're heading, where we're going next. And so going to the next slide, I want to first of all stop and just say these are the elections that are coming up in 2026. You've got all of these elections, and you can see the ones that I boxed in. These are the statewide elections. These are the ones, and I guess I should have, the state senator, the U.S. senator, and then the state offices that are listed are ones that are elected by the entire state population. But then you've got the U.S. House of Representatives, and also the state Senate. The state representatives are on the ballot, as well as these other offices that are listed over here, the judicial offices and the Board of Education. 4 of the districts are on the ballot. And then you've got various county offices on the ballot. And I've included the reference here so you can go back. When I send out these slides, you'll be able to look at it. So I was trying to understand where are these voters that we're trying to mobilize? And so if you look at this map, I got this from the worldpopulationreview.com. You can see that that from looking at the Alabama counties, Madison County and Mobile County are the most populous counties. And so, but they can't match the density. The number of, you can look at Jefferson County's population. It doesn't match the density of Jefferson County, but Madison and Mobile County both have over 400,000 people. The Alabama counties with the fewest residents are Perry, Lowndes, and Wilcox County. And you can see that the growth, if you go to this website, they've got a really neat interface where you can click on each one of these counties to see the rapid growth that's occurring in these counties, which I'll point out that when we were doing the redistricting evaluations, when the state was looking at these counties and how they were dividing up the the state house and state senates, the populous counties were already at their max, like plus and minus 5% was where they were setting, the number. They were allowing that much of a band of a range. And if they were at plus or minus 5%, then they used that. They were what it means is the counties up in the north end of the state were already maxed out. And so what's happening is these counties are still growing. So the main message is just here, an extra piece of tidbit is that when we do the census the next time, you're going to see some pretty big shifts as far as the state house and the state senate because of the rapid growth that's happening in the north and the south end of the states. Looking at where people are living, there are an estimated there's 5.2 million people who live in Alabama. 3.5 million of those actually live in cities. And so that's 67% of the residents of Alabama live in a city. And 1.3 million of those people live in the 10 most populous cities. And when you look at the 33 cities, you've got 2 million people living in the most populated cities of Alabama. I wanted to pull this information for you because it shows the distribution for the people living in Alabama. And so you can see that the vast majority of the people are age 18 and up. But I think it is interesting when you start looking at the 18 to 34-year-olds, you've got, a large number of people in Alabama who are really considered young voters. This is, I need to do more looking at this, but I wanted to throw this in here so you would have some information to understand the age distribution that we're seeing. When you look at this is the state house map, and you can see pretty clearly that what's happened is the house maps are pretty well gerrymandered the urban vote. I don't know if I'm trying to figure out if I can move. Let me move this up. So the urban vote is pretty well, gerrymandered. And what that does, some of that is basically because of the population, the dense population. I put a slide here, which I don't know if you can see this, but Jefferson County's got a real ton of state house districts. And these are broken out based on, population. There is not that much crossover county lines here. And then this is Madison County up here. You can, wherever you see this dense, these little small districts, you can pretty well guarantee that there's a lot of people. That's where a lot of people are living. When you start getting to the state senate maps, then it's also gerrymandered, but this is where you start seeing a lot of effort that was put in by the state to basically carve up the larger populated counties like Jefferson County, so that you see this district, state Senate District 5 takes out this portion of the I don't know if you can see my arrow, but it's really just showing you that in a lot of cases you're going to have people who represent Jefferson County who don't live in the county. This is really, I'm throwing all this in here to really kind of make a fuller picture so you understand that these are the people who are making the laws that affect elections and basically everything else. When you start looking at rural votes, I was talking about the importance of the votes in the city and in the cities, that's where a lot of people live. You can't discount the rural vote too, because when you look at what happened in CD2, you can see that was a pretty low voter turnout compared to the previous presidential election. But Mobile County had 35% of the vote. Montgomery had 31%. All of the other counties, which are considered rural, made up another third. So it really shows you that you really have to, if you're going to mobilize the vote, you've got to go pull on all of these different counties. You can't focus just on the densest populated county because, every vote counts. When you look at Alabama, the rural Alabama population, this is from the Public Health Department. They estimate over 2.1 million people in Alabama live in rural areas, 42% of the state's population. So now I'm going to switch gears. And I apologize if this seems disjointed. And when I get to a stopping point, you can ask questions and I'll go back and highlight anything that you want to talk about more. So looking at the congressional map, you can see this is the congressional map that was developed by the court after the Milligan decision, was not enacted by the state of Alabama. The judges hired a special master, and this is the map that is in use for this next year's election. When they draw these maps, the estimate from the census was 5,024,278 people. That was the census count. And so that was divided equally, and that there is no range on that one. They had to actually divide this map up to have exactly the same amount of people in every district. And so with that being said, each one of these districts has 717,754 people in it. And that was a line that was drawn in the sand when the map was approved. And as the time goes on and people are moving into the area or leaving areas, then the population shifts. And that's why for the census, they've got to get a good count and then they'll redraw the districts. So looking at Congressional District 1, looking at this Congressional District 1, the counties that are in this district, I listed them here. I also highlighted which league covers those counties. And Trinette, I'm assuming you cover all 5 of these, and I can edit this if that's wrong. Is that
yes?
It's right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this to me is kind of gives you a framework, and I'll show you the next slide. But this gives you a framework for the leagues in this region to collaborate with each other. There's also opportunities for other groups who are associated with these leagues to come together and find ways to mobilize the vote in this region. So looking at the cities that are in these regions, this is Congressional District 1, and so this is from that World Population website that I'd given you the reference earlier. And you look at the different cities, and this is in order of population. You can see Mobile is the most populous, and then followed by Dothan. And then you've got Daphne, Enterprise, Foley, Fairhope, Pritchard. Mobile and Baldwin County obviously have a lot more of the people living there. But you can see that different parts of the Congressional District 1 have, it goes in descending order. There's the next page. This is all CD1. One of the things I wanted to point out, which I had promised to go in and do a turnout, but when I went back and started calling the city clerks, and the registrars, they could not tell me how many registered voters are in this city. I'm talking to a person I know at the Secretary of State's office. Apparently that's where they get their numbers. The cities get their number from the Secretary of State. And this is like a special request. I'm still working it, but I've only gotten 2 numbers, and that is Birmingham and Athens. And so, I'll still be working that, but anyway, I just wanted to point out, when you look at Mobile, the number, for example, the total votes, this is on the August 26th I did not go back and pull the September election. I pulled the total number of mayoral votes that were cast on August 26th. And so without having the number of registered voters, I can still see from the population, if you assume 75% of those people are registered to vote, the turnout, you can kind of estimate the turnout rate. But there's a lot of room to improve, I guess, is the main message in a lot of these numbers. It's still a good turnout. You'll see on some of these others, it's some of the turnout in the different cities was great and others was pretty low. But, in order to really mobilize the vote 2026, we've got to figure out how do we mobilize the vote. And I'm going to keep filling in the data for these other mayoral elections like Daphne and on down. But this gives you a list of the cities that are in CD1 and the counties. And these are others. I did not go in and add all of these. These are smaller than, you see the last one that I put down was 3,489. All of these are smaller than that. And then there's a whole lot of small towns that are just a few hundred people. So then you've got Congressional District 2, and these are the counties that make up CD2. And then these are the cities, the major cities in the CD2. And so when you look at Montgomery did not have a mayoral election this year, and neither apparently did Phoenix City. Judy, we didn't have an election in Phoenix. I couldn't find that. Okay. But you can see the cities, and we'll fill this in, but and then Congressional District 3, which includes Auburn, LWV. Oh, I should have pointed out up here. You can see the Congressional District 2, the only two cities that have a league presence, local league presence, are these Mobile and Montgomery. We're working with our partners and allies to help out in these other counties, but that's from a state league level. Then we've got Congressional District 3, and so Lee County is covered by the East Alabama League. These other counties do not have a league presence, although once again we're definitely willing to we'll talk about Vote 411 later, but this just kind of shows the gives you an idea of the counties, and then you can look at the cities. And Opelika had a mayoral election, and most of these other cities did too. And these are the larger cities. Congressional District 4 goes all the way from Tuscaloosa up to Florence, Lauderdale County. And so you can see there's Greater Tuscaloosa, Northwest Alabama, and then Marshall County is part of the Tennessee Valley League region. And so these other counties, all of this together shows opportunities for us to work together, and also finding ways to collaborate with others in the community. And this is a breakdown of the cities, the larger cities within CD4. And so it goes, you can see it stretches all the way across the state. So there's a lot of medium-sized cities and then a ton of small cities. Congressional District 5 has 6 counties in it, and all of them have some coverage by a local league. And when you look at the cities, most of them are really, there's one big one, Huntsville, and then you start going down. Once you get down to Meridianville, everything else is, just a few thousand down to a few hundred people. And then Congressional District 6 has these counties in it. And then there's a lot of good-sized cities in CD6. You can see I went down all the way to Clanton, which is after you get past Clanton, then the population just drops off pretty dramatically on the size of the cities. And then CD7 has Oh, and I needed to point out Birmingham. This was one of the ones that we had. I got the number of registered voters. So you have a population estimate of 195,000, and a number of registered voters as of mid-August was 142,000. And so when you look at the number of votes cast, that was about a 23% turnout. I need to go back and look at CD5 because this was Athens has around 34,000 people in it. About 20,000, 21,000 are registered, and there were about 4,200 votes cast. So that was about a 20% turnout. CD7. This also covers a lot of territory. And the two counties that have league coverage are Jefferson and Tuscaloosa. Local league coverage. And so once again, Birmingham, it's really difficult to split the population and the number of registered voter between the two CDs. And so I don't have that broken out like that. And then that's the end of this slideshow. And I'm going to stop share. And I guess I would like to get feedback from, when I was looking at this and the number of people who cast ballots in the mayoral election seemed to me to be pretty low. And, considering where we were hoping to mobilize the vote in 2025 so that when we move into 2026, we can, we'd have sort of a tailwind. And I think, one thing we know a lot more now, and I think we're better prepared to go into the communities that we were in this past year. But I'm just wondering, what do you think? I mean, about what you're seeing here? Is there any ideas you get? Leonette?
To underscore the importance of looking at these statewide races, I'll refer to what happened in Mississippi last Tuesday. And the reason that the two Senate seats went from Republican to Democrat, and the Democrats finally broke the supermajority in the Mississippi Senate, is because there was a lawsuit on the gerrymandering of state Senate districts in Mississippi. And the plaintiffs were victorious, and that led to this ripple effect of people who were able to choose their candidates instead of the other way around. So I underscore the importance of doing our research on state, House, and Senate districts and seeing where that might lead us in the next couple of years.
Those were state Senate races, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so they're the ones that basically vote on the maps that then are what everybody lives by.
But see, this also happened in Georgia, and the reason that the Public Service Commission saw some changes was because a lawsuit in Georgia was about how Public Service Commission districts were drawn and who got to vote. As a result of that, 2 Democrats got elected on the Public Service Commission.
That was a really big deal because they had managed to sue. They sued and won to say that the Public Service Commission had actually violated the Voting Rights Act the way it was laid out, and so, but yet there had not been any real changes in the as far as the making the seats more representative of the people. So I think that's, Leonette, what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense because we've got to all be paying attention to what's happening at these state races and trying to basically get people to show up. Thank you. Jennifer, I see your hands up.
I have an observation that links to what Lynette just said. I heard Chris Christie speak on the redistricting gerrymandering issue in Alabama recently. He was not optimistic about the national level with the Louisiana case looking like it's going to go against voting rights. But he was optimistic about 2 cases, the state Senate case in Alabama, the redistricting lawsuit, there, and also the Jefferson County Commission lawsuit. He felt like both of those were strong and that those would go in favor of voting rights. So it's interesting that Lynette said the victory in Mississippi and in Georgia were connected to legal actions that have been that we're winning at the local level, at the state level, that are still going in favor of voting rights. And so just to, not that that's something that I can do as an individual, but that it's so important for the league to stay involved in that level, at that level with and because I know you've been you were involved in you've been involved in several cases. I know you were involved in the case against the Secretary of State when he tried to purge naturalized citizens last fall. So just my point is saying it seems like we are seizing opportunities. We are winning at the state level in terms of actions for voting rights, not depending on which party who wins what election, but that it's important for the league to stay involved with its legal action, so that everybody gets a chance to choose their lawmaker instead of vice versa, as Lynette said. I mean, and one last thing, it's a little depressing to me that the few times we are seeing openings for expanding the franchise are with legal action, but it's not surprising, and it does mean it's going to be ever more important.
So I may not be the one that made this up, but I always call Alabama the make me state, because the only way they'll give you any fair voting right is if through federal action. That's just proven over and over again. I did want to point out that, and I don't know the answer, but there is a change coming, I believe, to the Birmingham maps based on another voting rights redistricting lawsuit. I believe, Judy, I think that is actually going to be in place for the upcoming election, isn't it?
Is that the county?
It's the state. I thought it was state Senate.
Oh, it may be. It may be.
Yeah. And there's not supposed to be a ripple effect, across the whole state. But the last time it happened, there was, because when they start shaking up the boundaries and looking at the population, then sometimes things happen that ripple across the whole state. So,
Can I add something?
Yeah.
I was just going to say that all of this is helped by having candidates too.
Exactly. There was a lot of excitement in some of the races. You could tell when they had, percentage higher turnout, you could tell that there was a lot of energy. And so that's where it's so important for people to actually step up and run, give you an option, not just have one person running, because then it's not an election. So I did want to point out one of the things we wanted to talk about were some of the issues that were seen during the, leading up to the municipal election and during the elections this past summer. We really everyone needs to be paying attention. And if you see something, then either let us know or 866 our vote. One of the things that when Judy and I were working on trying to get the information to feed the Vote 411 was that they were converting all of the maps to a GIS format during this year for the municipal races. And that was going on in July, and they weren't changing the maps, they were just converting them, which, when you start trying to do stuff at the same time you're getting ready to have a big election, there's probably going to be a lot of problems. And there were some issues that when we talked to the folks in the election offices, they were having to go back to the GIS folks to get the maps corrected so that when people went to the polls, they wouldn't be in the wrong polling place. And so that was going on. Plus, we did find, and people who are from Mobile area can clarify this further if I misstate it, but during the runoff, there were some people. Last March, if you'll recall, there was a postcard that was sent out to over 400,000 people saying that we think you moved and you need to respond and let us know if your information needs to be correct, or do you need to, be basically, removed from the polls. And so they gave them a deadline on when they needed to respond. And apparently that deadline fell after the August 26th election, but, before the runoff. And so people showed up to the polls in Mobile. And this is what we're hearing. We don't have an exact, we're hearing this through multiple people, but apparently they showed up to the polls and the poll workers were not able to check them in because there was something going on. The bottom line is, these people were inactive. They should have been able to fill out the updated verification form and get a regular ballot, but apparently that wasn't happening.
They weren't allowed to vote. I was there. I was active. I'm in Mobile. This is
okay.
Betty Sheen. They were not. Yeah, between them voting in August and coming back for the runoff election, about 27,000 people in Alabama were kicked off the voter rolls. It was as if they were never registered. And
that by itself, Betty, is really, to me, is so strange that's the way, because I heard that multiple places, but it really should never work like that, because even if you get
on paper, but in reality, it does. One of my cousins was actually affected. I took him to the poll. So he had voted in August. I took him there. Yeah. And we went back in September. He was given a provisional ballot, but the turnout of the race was affected by that significantly, because after they counted the provisional ballots and stuff, the race could have gone any way, but that ensured that the Black Democratic female candidate was not going to win. Yeah. And I think that the difference might have been 800 or 900 votes. And you had the August votes pulled, and what was really astonishing to me is that when we came back for the runoff, which they say in a local election, municipal elections, that people don't show up. Well, there were more people showing up for the runoff election than they did the election in August.
Well, I guess I don't know the status on. I know the 866 Our Vote team was working that, but the thing for next year that that's such a terrible thing to have happened, and it's being worked. I don't know where we'll end up with that, but for the next year, this is just a real good example of where people need to. I got one of those cards, and I would not have thought about myself being thrown off the voter roll. That I thought, if anything, I'd be made inactive, because that's what the instructions on the form said, is that, you'll have to fill it out when you show up to vote. So that to me there's something broken there that they fixed. But the fact is that this is a prime example of where we really need to push on everyone to check their registration information. There were some other issues that happened during the elections that, I don't know that it helps to go through all of them here, but I think the main thing, one of the reasons I wanted to put this information out there, were by congressional district, if we can all organize to cover, as to get people to show up and vote, then we got to figure out if they didn't show up for their local election, which affects their lives directly, then we've got to figure out how do we message this so that people will actually consider that, that they've got to start showing up and actually participating and engaging with their elected leaders. And that includes showing up for next year's elections. And so I'm just really asking all of you, we need your feedback. Is there something that might appeal to the voters? We start having these conversations with voters about, do you think your vote doesn't count? Why? What is it that you care about? We need to start sharing that. We need to start trying to ask questions to people who are not voting and find out why not. And is there something that we can do to help turn that around? And it's going to take I think it's going to take a lot of conversations. And that was one thing I heard about the election in New York. That was probably the biggest thing, is when you look at what happened up there, I think when they talk about the reason that the turnout was so high there is because people felt like they had a stake. Now, whether we'll see how things turn out, but we're going to have to do something similar. We're going to get people to turn around and actually start participating. All right. Well, unless if anyone else has something to add, I'm going to switch gears here. And we've kind of already been.
Oh, I do. Because
who is that?
This is Betty.
Betty. Okay.
I'm listening to you, and I'm almost hearing like blame the victim, and we're hearing
I'm not. I am not. I'm
saying here in Alabama, when you walk up, these people that did go in and were tossed off the list and that kind of stuff. So when you're talking to people, there's so many people in Alabama who cannot vote. I think our energies would be best used making sure that these people have access to the ballot than trying to get the people who traditionally don't vote to vote. This is one of the few states, 3 states that don't allow early voting. We have a lot of work to do rather than concentrate on the people who just do not vote for whatever reason, to concentrate on the positive side of it. Ex-offenders, there are laws you can commit in Alabama. Well, we just got them to get rid of moral turpitude and define what it is that made you ineligible to vote. And every time I look at that list, it gets longer and longer. Yes. And for me, rather than spend my time working on people that for whatever reason aren't interested, because when something controversial comes up, there's no problem in getting people to the polls. That's what happened in New York. That's what happened with, I'm saying from my viewpoint, that's what happened in Mobile with in the runoff. The runoff were more people than was in the original election and stuff. So when there's something controversial, when people see how it affects them directly, they will come out and vote. So instead of us, that's a waste, a waste of time, but our energies, I would like to see our energies drawn to getting rid of the stuff that make us typical Alabama people. Why? The people who can't vote, let's concentrate on that.
Yeah, the
state will not allow to vote. That's a big chunk of folk. So
thank you, Betty. And I think Kim is going to talk about what we're doing on our C4 side of the house, because right now what we're doing here is trying to figure out the engaging voters and getting them to show up. But there is an advocacy arm. Kim, do you want to go? Trinette's had her hand up first, and then Kim. Trinette, do you want to go first?
Yeah. One thing that I see in our area, we don't have a voter registration problem. We have a voter turnout problem. And what we plan on doing is, like, after the first of the year, is start having listening sessions and engaging people and talking to them. You can't wait until a month before election to start getting people to the polls.
Yeah.
We can start now by building a relationship with them and to see what barriers that's in place that keep them from voting, because it may be some. I heard a presenter talking, said, who votes on Tuesday? People have work and kids have school. They don't have babysitters. They don't have transportation. There's all kinds of things that we need to identify and get in place in order to break down some of these barriers people are experiencing.
That's excellent that sounds wonderful. We'll definitely be talking to people. I'll mention something that we're doing up here after Kim. I'm gonna let Kim go next. Thank you, Trinette.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to first of all say that, Betty, I could not agree with you more, right? I mean, we definitely need to address all of those issues as to the people who actually cannot vote right now. But it's, from my perspective, I guess it's kind of a chicken and an egg thing, because we most likely can't get those things passed if we don't get different legislators in the legislature. So to do that, we need to get more people out to vote, right? Who are passionate about the same things that we're passionate about, which is early voting, absentee ballot tracking, helping people who are disabled have the, help them vote, all those things. And so I guess that's kind of the conundrum really is, yes, we absolutely are going to push and advocate for all of those things this year. But we need people who are typically inactive to come out and vote if those are the things that they are passionate about. They need to help us get legislators in office who also believe those things are important, and that's just not our reality right now. Or have them engage with us to just contact their legislators. But really, inactive voters are very, very important for us to make all of this happen. So, but you're right, we do need to do all of that hard work too.
Thank you, Kim. Jennifer, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's a huge problem. You've got social change, you've got messaging from social media that depresses the vote. Younger people always vote less. They don't own homes, they don't have kids in school. In some ways, they're less invested in, certainly in local elections. Apparently, midterms, they really drop off. So and then you've got, let's be honest, you almost have a war on the vote. You have certain politicians that are actively seeking to restrict the vote, and that effort is going to be on steroids next year. Mm-hmm. And that's just the moment that we're in. And so that's almost the elephant in the room, is that we're sitting here as pro-democracy women, trying to first get out, reach the people that are registered, but just facing barriers. And then also, how do we boost the vote with younger people and those that aren't voting? But at the same time, we're trying to make these standard civic improvements to our franchise. We're running into all this flack and noise from a group of politicians that wants to reduce the vote. And that's just the reality of where we are today. And I don't mean that in any partisan comment. So that's just one thing that I think we have to realize, that we're just not out for an afternoon walk. We're almost walking in a blizzard.
Yeah. Jennifer,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. What you just made me think that Kim and Judy, one of the things I'd like for you guys one of you to talk about is the Take Action Tuesday, because Jennifer, what you're talking about with the national actions, and we've also got the state actions, that's the League of Women Voters is divided up. Our state league is divided into different pieces. And what I'm talking about today is really voter engagement, civic engagement. But there's also the advocacy side of the house, which I think it would be useful to talk about the Take Action Tuesday, what we did last year and what's planned for this coming year. Who wants to talk about that?
I could talk about that, I guess.
Okay. Sorry, I hit you cold, but it just seemed like it was needed.
Yeah. Yes. So I hope most of you are familiar with our Take Action Tuesday newsletter that we started last year. The legislature is typically in session Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. So on Tuesdays, we send out a newsletter with items that we think are important and that you might want to consider contacting your legislator about, with talking points, graphics you can share on social media. But we do that on Tuesdays so that you can contact them before they go into session on Wednesdays. So we will start those again this year. Session starts January the 13th. So we will be starting the newsletter right around that time. So anything else?
Those were, I guess, Kim, those don't just, it's not just local. I guess you got that we also pull on the national effort, what Jennifer was talking about, the attacks on democracy that have been happening.
Yes.
We put out calls to action on that as well.
Yes. Yeah, we do. And we have been doing some, now because we are getting some things as well. We just did one recently. It is local as well, but, for the PBS thing. So we do continue to try to do those. They're just not called Take Action Tuesday.
Yeah.
We also do with partner organizations, ally groups who have actions that we align with. We include those as well.
I think that's so important, and I'm new to the league. I've been getting your state newsletter, but you haven't really. I'm new to having you on my radar. I'm trying to learn as much as I can, and I think that's a fabulous. I really love Take Action Tuesdays, and I think the more we do that, and the better we get that, the better we're going to be able to confront this anti-democratic sentiment and movement that we're facing in the country. Today, all of the people, the election deniers from 2020 were paroled today. Just a bit of news if you didn't see that news. So that message says it's okay to lie or to violate the law in the denial of election results. It's a very serious message in time that we're in. So I just think we have to always we can't solve that problem today, but we always have to be aware of that. And then I just have one more question because I'm new, and this is about the historic roots of the league and for women. Are we adequately partnering and using our women, the network of women voters, or even network of women nonprofits that are nonpartisan and non-political, but have to reach their members and urge their members to vote on good government kinds of issues? Are we networking with women at a high priority, when other women's organizations at a high priority? And I say that with all deference to the men on this call. But we know that women vote more than men, and they vote for good. They tend to be currently are on the side of the higher numbers of women are in the pro-democracy movement. So the historic population that this organization served and organized around is the population that is leading the charge, the pro-democracy effort today. And I'm just wondering if the league is not best positioned to reach out to other non-political and non-partisan women's organizations that Moms Demand Action or political, but the Read Freely, other organizations that may be primarily women in more targeted ways. And you may already be doing this, and this may be an insulting question, and forgive me.
No, Jennifer, thank you for bringing that up, because it is important for us to look for ways to partner. I did want to, Kim, I'll just say this. There was a note that came out, or an email that came out from National this past week that says that they've created grassroots power partnerships. I'm excited. I was excited to see that they're partnering with the AUW, American Association of University Women.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, I just wanted to tell you, it's them plus the National Council of Jewish Women and the YWCA.
Yes.
So that is getting at what you're talking about. And that was just something that was announced this past week that they are partnering. That is, they call it they created a strengthen democracy in communities nationwide. It's a grassroots power partners for their Unite and Rise 8.5 campaign, which last month when we met, or 2 months ago when we had our discussion, and Kim talked about the 8.5, Unite and Rise 8.5, because I want everybody to realize that is a priority. A lot of organizations are really focused on voter mobilization during this next year, because if we can't mobilize the vote, then obviously nothing's ever going to change. I want to turn over and let Barbara Roberts, you had your hand up. It's been a while, so.
I don't know. Yeah. This is my first call with y'all. I've finally started to get more active, but I have just some thoughts and questions too.
All right.
I'm on the Shelby County side of Hoover, but actually work in downtown Montgomery. So I run into Steve Marshall in my Diet Coke gas station about once a month. But I ran into him a couple of weeks ago, the day after I watched the Alabama Solutions movie. If you haven't seen that, it's quite disturbing and kind of highlighted. But in calling elected officials, I probably did more so about 6 months ago, but it's very frustrating. It's such gaslighting, and you can almost hear the little sorority girls that answer the phone rolling their eyes at you and just saying, that's not true, and, blah, blah, blah. I've gotten where I'll email them, and I've gotten where, when you call Tubbs, you get, God bless you, and all this. So I start quoting as Jennifer, I think you just said, lying, like lying is so wrong, coach, and, that kind of thing. But I think the local elections, I watched it on the HBO Max thing a couple of weeks ago. If you have AT&T for phone or internet, you get HBO free, by the way. But my other question was, have the blue dot billboards in downtown Birmingham, they're pretty good about calling out a lot of the BS, I guess we're seeing. Does anybody have seen any increased engagement with voters as a result of potentially people seeing more of those?
We don't have a way to track that, because that's not our organization. But it's good when, billboards definitely are something that we're talking about doing during, these upcoming elections, to point people to the Vote 411 system that we've got, so that they can become more involved and engaged, in learning about the candidates, and then making sure that people don't get surprised when the elections show up and they're not ready. So that's definitely a piece of it.
And I didn't tell Steve Marshall this verbally because I was trying to be polite. Well, I told him in a more polite way that you really look like an asshole when you were interviewed 3 times in it. I didn't say it like that, but I keep hoping we'll get some national news and kind of what Betty was saying about increasing. I mean, that's just on the incarceration and how horrible it is, but also maybe increasing the right to vote too. So
all of this is critical. I'm going to pass it to, thank you, Barbara, and we need to please keep coming and being engaged, and we do. Are you in the Birmingham League? Is that?
No, I'm just mainly in the Shelby County Democrats under Marcia Sturdivant.
Oh, okay. I was just asking because we do have a voter services committee that is focusing on getting the messaging for this coming year.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Barbara. Beth, you're next.
Okay, off of mute. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
This is kind of the poor woman's billboards, but it's doing signs on overpasses and along the road. I do it for a couple other organizations, and it's great in that you make direct contact with drivers, and I can see things like maybe a week before an election, verify you're registered, time to vote tomorrow,
Well,
things like that.
that'd be a lot less costly because that is part of the thing that's really keeping us,
And
holding us
all you
back.
need are a couple of people to do it and some foam board. It's not that intensive in people or in materials. So,
That's a great idea.
and I'd be happy to help anybody in Montgomery.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. All right, Jennifer, and then I think we'll need to shift gears after this.
And I'm sorry, I'm being piggy about the time today, but just, I would be happy to try to work with women's organizations in Central Alabama. I'm based in Birmingham, to see like the AAUW or the other organization, National Council, the other organizations that you mentioned, even Moms Demand Action. I think we may be in a position to cross partisan lines to get voters registered, to get people to turn out for better government and pro-democracy. And I would be personally interested in trying to network with women's groups and perhaps even helping. I'm a retired or recovering journalist, perhaps even see us mount some kind of communication campaign to women voters that's targeting women voters, so we can get women talking to other women about voting and turning out, and that possibly we can cross partisan lines and with these existing organizations. I know that UW is going to be AAUW, not UAUW. The AAUW has got to be full of women of all political persuasions, for example. But I think it's almost important for us to I think we're in a unique position to talk across partisan lines to get voters to turn out for pro-democracy initiatives.
Well, it's definitely needed. And Jennifer, I know I owe you I need to send you an email with the information we're doing on the Voter Services Committee, because definitely want to pull you in on that. So I think we're going to need to shift gears, but I did want to ask if someone in the Montgomery area, I know, or maybe I'm looking across the people here, Laura Hill, the YWCA is still, I was trying to understand where they're at, because that was one of the partners. And I remember during the work that we were doing on the, 19th Amendment, that they were doing some events, but do you know where they're at? Okay. We'll just have to look them up, try to figure out where they're.
I am not sure if there's a YWCA in Alabama. If there are, it'd be Mobile, Montgomery, or Birmingham, I think.
Okay.
But I can't tell.
Yeah, I sometimes it's hard to figure that out. All right, and I did want to answer Deborah Diaz's question before we move on. One of the things I've been collecting, Judy and I both have been collecting up election results over the last, couple of 3 months, and it's not on the Secretary of State's website because they say that's city elections. They don't cover that. So basically, you have to hunt and peck, go to the city websites. You have to, go to the local news, and that's where you get the data. The information, when I put the total counts, I actually did just that, and then I added up the votes. So you can see, when you go out to each individual city, you can see who all was running and who won. And then you got to go back and find the runoffs. If they had, we had a list of runoffs to the best of our ability to figure that out, because the Secretary of State does not keep track of any of that, at least not in any public way that you can see. All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and this will be quick, and then I'm going to shift over and hand it off to, let's see, I have to get rid of this thing somehow. There we go. Okay, this one is pretty simple. One of the things that we're doing is, creating messaging as far as one of the consistent things that was mentioned. Someone mentioned it at our last training, and we've had several meetings to understand, where we're going to focus our priorities. But I wanted to share this as far as just an example. When you're talking to someone who's the unhoused community, there are things that affect them that they may not see the connection to voting. And some of the reasons, at the local, state, national levels, when you're interacting with a person who is a citizen, who has a right to vote, in many cases, they're in the basic survival mode. They're not thinking about voting. But when you talk to them about the issues that affect them, some of the reasons that they should be interacting and talking to their elected leaders on a regular basis and showing up to vote would include these things that are listed here. What I did was, I'll just tell you, I went out and did a search to find different organizations that are focused on the unhoused communities. And these are the things that they had as the top thing issues. Roger and I here locally in Huntsville went to the homeless shelter and basically showed them this list and said, talked through it and asked them what they, do they think this covers it? And we sparked a really dynamic conversation. They started telling me some of the issues that affected them. So even though this list probably isn't 100% accurate, it does get the conversation started, because things that affect people who are unhoused is their access to health care, addiction treatment, food assistance, having housing, a place to get out of the weather. Also getting workforce development and training so that at some point they can make the choice to step back from being unhoused and trying to get back on track. They need a minimum wage, veterans benefits. Many of the people that we meet at the shelter are actually veterans. And one of their big concerns is safety and security and basic human dignity, and helping them to talk about understanding that they do have a right to vote, and that their vote is their voice, and it is one of the most effective ways to make their needs and preferences known to elected leaders. This is really kind of food for thought. I'll send this out to you, but after our last meeting back in September, people expressed a need to try to address, why does my vote doesn't count? Why should I vote? And so I sent out a survey and got feedback, and the consensus of the group was that, we're going to focus on certain demographics. That doesn't mean the others are not important, but it would be, the youth vote and low income voting. And so right now we are, and I will also say that I'm also looking at, I'm talking to disability groups to have a focused conversation about, what issues do they consider important, and then talk about how voting can make a difference and how they can become more civically engaged. And these are just conversations that are really going to help us, start fleshing out, if we're talking to people about why their vote counts, why they should participate. These kind of focused conversations are going to help us, be able to, be more consistent and also more effective when we're trying to mobilize the vote. Julie and some others they've been going out in the last a month to talk to people when they're at at rights restoration events about why, the issues that they feel are important. I've got a meeting this Friday to talk to a group of disabled people about their concerns. And then, other areas, there are some youth groups, that are associated with United Way, or public housing has youth groups. There are a lot of other organizations that are out there that really, could be a good place for us to go and talk and try to understand what issues people think are important, and then also just get their feedback on, what they care about, and maybe have a conversation about, getting more involved civically, and also, maybe figuring out how do we motivate people to vote. So that's this presentation is very simple for the unhoused community, but it's the beginning of an effort that we're doing to understand the issues that affect people. Julie, I'm going to hand what you got a comment?
I was just going to say that, we've been at the bus station a lot in the last, we're pretty regular there. And so the thing I've been trying to do is actually speak to those issues. So we talk about transportation at the bus station. Sorry, y'all, I've got a haunted clock going off. I apologize. Yeah. Okay. And so, but, even when, asked, what are your 3 issues? People are almost taken aback, like they have to stop for a minute. Wow, I've got so many. Like, let me get a minute to kind of, put that in place. And some people almost had to be prodded in a weird way, because they're just so overwhelmed by, and the answers did vary. But again, I think that's important to speak to, like when we're at drug court, we say, well, did you have a good judge? Because that's something that's directly impacted somebody. And the answers were, some of them were some were all over the place. Some were, as you'd imagine, but I'm going to keep doing it, and I'm going to keep asking. And the way that I started the conversation was, you guys have probably seen us down here a bunch, and we're always telling you to go vote. But, today I want to hear from you. I want to hear from what you have to say. You tell me what's important to you. And I think a lot of times, I may come on strong like that. You really need to do this. You do. But, I hear from people, the politicians don't speak about poverty, and they don't. And that's something in a low income state that really needs to be addressed and hammered home. So that's all I'll say. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. This effort, I think one of the things we really, rather than us talking at people about importance of voting, we need to have this conversation in a more, basically in a more where we're in a listening mode, but also ready to help, when they start saying, well, I care about this, and then help them maybe see how elected leaders actually affect that particular, whatever it is that they feel is important. And that, having my daughter's getting old enough now where she doesn't always tell me what's on her mind, but a lot of times when you're talking to them, young people don't want you to tell them what they think is important. They already know but they, like Julie, I have found a lot of times, you get a blank stare if you just go in and say, what do you care about? It's more, you got to have sort of a guided conversation and then get them talking and ideally to each other, so that we're basically there to help people start talking about the things that they care about without being so polarized. All right, Trinette, you got your hand up.
Yes. When she was talking about drug, did you have a good judge at drug court? One thing that I noticed, Birmingham area has different services than we have down here in Dothan. All those services for the vets, for the disabled, for addiction, all of those things, we don't have that down here. They do not have options. And I think that would be very helpful. just letting them know that, you know what, there are some services that are available, that can be made available, but you have to get involved in order to make your voice heard. And I think the more people we can motivate to get involved in order to make sure that they get the services. Why should we why should we have separate services or have lack of services in one part of the state that they have available in another part?
Yeah, Jefferson County is a whole different ballgame when it comes to the courts. Julie, thank you, Trinette.
Mm-hmm.
Just to follow up with what Trinette said, when Dana was serving at Veterans Court the first time, she had a gentleman that did not want to register. And she said, at Amnesty Court. And she said, are you enjoying this Amnesty Court today? Because the judge previously, this is the first time this judge has ever done this. And sometimes when I speak at drug court, I tell people this lovely judge behind me did not fly in on a unicorn. She was voted in by the good people of Jefferson County. And Trinette, you are right. I never fail to give honor and glory to my county and our judges on our probate. We have some really, really good ones here. And I never fail to acknowledge them. We are very blessed.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. LaTanya?
Thank you for acknowledging me. I just basically want to say, as being a previous employee of Jefferson County Drug Court, and I was under the great Judge Pete Johnson, that has since retired. Yes, from Birmingham local. I am part of the Birmingham local league. But you're exactly right. In various parts of the state, at one time, they were trying to actually try to get judges involved in building or bringing on a drug court type situation. Of course, in Birmingham, we were partnered with the University of Alabama through UAB in the psychology department. So that is something that maybe during your political cycle, maybe you can encourage judges in your area to maybe look into drug court programs such as that. And I know that a great ASU grad, myself being an ASU grad, is now picked up the mantle after Judge Johnson. And also there was another young lady, I can't remember her name. It was a female judge. She actually picked up the mental health piece as it pertains to the same type alternative program to help those veterans as well as others that not just had drug problems, but mental illness, to help them with their court cases and help them through the legal process. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the information. And these are the kind of conversations having with voters that where we've got, we need to get confident in our ability to communicate with people about these things, like Julie and Dana have been doing this for a while. But if we can start having conversations and then basically try to, make people understand that this is not something you can sit on the sidelines if you want to keep what you got, or if you want to create change. People have got to actually start getting involved, and the first step is being aware of it, but then the next one is to vote, and then also to start talking to your elected leaders on a regular basis. I am going to stop here, and the last item on our agenda, which we've got about 15 minutes, and Roger Ellis is going to give us an overview of the administrative calendar for the coming year. And this is going to give us the timeline that we need to, at least through the primary, that'll help us to our planning. So Roger, take it away.
Well, hello, everybody. How things going for you? We're going to talk through the different steps the candidates have to go through to get involved with the election and get elected. First of all, the candidates are out promoting themselves. There's a pathway to the ballot. There's fees run for office, a pathway to the ballot, primary date is 19th of May, 2026, and have a voting plan. Please wait until the presentation is over to ask questions or write them down as we go along. What we see right now are a lot of candidates are out there talking and promoting their party, promoting what they want to do, and this, that, and the other thing. But what they're doing is filling out the public to see how responsive the public is to them. And also, sooner or later, they're also getting contributions. But sooner or later, they're going to have to submit their names and officially be on the ballot. So on January 23rd, the candidates seeking nomination by party primary must file a declaration of candidacy with state party chairman no later than 5 p.m. 116 days before the election. This is also when they have to pay the fee. On February 26, the state party chairman must certify names of primary election candidates, except for candidates of county offices to the Secretary of State, no later than 5 p.m. 82 days prior to the primary. And the county party chairman must certify names of primary candidates, the county office probate judge. And that has to be done 82 days before the primary. Now, the fees I had mentioned, this is what the fees are. If you're going to run for governor, you have to pay $3,000. The lieutenant governor is $1,500. Attorney General, the Secretary of State, all the way down to you get the state Senate, they have to pay $1,000. The state House representatives pay $500. Now, when I was looking this up, I also found the ones for the national. So I went ahead and put this on here too. This is how much they have to pay on a national scale. If you run for president of the United States, your fee is going to be $20,000. Then you have your House of Representatives at $3,400. It goes all the way down to the Alabama Board of Education representative. But it just gives you an idea how these fees work. Then on March 4th, the last day for political parties to submit to the probate judge for county offices and the Secretary of State for state and federal offices any amendments or corrections to the certifications of candidates for the primary election. That's 76 days prior to the primary election. You usually see that, somebody may have to change something on their candidacy or change something. This is when they have to do it. Then March 6th, the Secretary of State must certify names of opposing candidates for federal and state offices to the probate judge no later than 74 days prior to the election. Now, on March 9th, the deadline for persons who do not wish to accept nomination in the primary is 71 days before the date of the election. To March 20th, probate judge must issue public notice in each voting precinct of the requirements for and availability of registering and voting ads for all handicapped and elderly individuals no later than 60 days before any state elections. They also have that last state political party can decline to accept and come under primary election law is 60 days prior to the election. Then March 25th, probate judge must furnish each of qualified voters to the absentee election manager 55 days prior to the primary. On April 17th, they take a break and take out Confederate Memorial Day. On May 11th, for any absentee application received on or after the 8th day prior to the election that does not contain a copy of the approved form of identifications, the absentee election manager shall issue a provisional ballot to that voter. On May 20th, absentee applications returned by the mail must be received no later than 7 days prior to the election. The absentee application returned by hand must be received not less than 5 days before the election. May 18th, absentee ballots being returned by hand to the absentee election managers must be received no later than the close of business on the day prior to the election. Now, pathway to the ballot, the primary elections on May 19th, 2026. Absentee ballots being returned by mail to the absentee election manager must be received no later than noon on that day. The primary days, and this is the dates we have to really be careful of. May 4th is a voter registration cutoff date. After May 4th, you can register, but it's not going to count towards May 19th primary election. June 1st is voter registration cutoff date for the runoff. June 16th is a runoff. October 19th, voter registration cutoff, and that's for the November 3rd general elections. That's when we vote for that for everybody. And the candidates must win by majority of votes, 50+1. Also, check voting in elections. Check your registration or voter register to vote. This comes up every time we go up. I always find that somebody that does not check their voter registration, and they have to go ahead and re-register again. You have to keep tabs of that, because the closer you're going to get, you're going to hit that 2-week cutoff and you can't register. Learn about early voting options. We have absentee voting now. Both of the Secretary of State consider that early voting, which is not, but it is an early voting option. Explore your day of voting options, research candidates, and share your plans. Now, if you have any questions, you can go to LWVAL.org. And you may have noticed during these slides, I see you have these little boxes all along there that talk about elections. I did that so you at least when you look at this, you're reminded of an election coming up. That's why it's on there, because of did that so to remind you of primary elections coming up and the runoffs coming up. So that's why that's on there. And if you want to go to the calendar, you can click on this and it'll take you to the Secretary of State site to look at the calendar. Anybody have any questions?
I see John Ham had a question about the date. Let me see if I can. Yeah, it was a 2026. Yeah, that was, see the first bullet. It was just a typo on that first bullet.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. So this, right? Okay, Judy.
Just wanted to mention that all of this, that we're also having 6 cities in Alabama with municipal elections next August. Most of them were this past year, but we've got 6. But the number of days prior to election that all these things happen for the primaries that Roger has shown are exactly the same thing for the city elections as well. There's you calculate your last day to register, your last day to submit applications, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Are all of those municipals in August?
I'm 90% sure that's true.
Yeah, so we need to come up with a calendar that overlays these so that it's clear which elections we're talking about. But for everybody's information, this past year for the August elections, they started doing a candidate qualification. Was it starting in May? And they had the stuff he was talking about, the candidate. It's nonpartisan, obviously, for municipal elections, but we'll be.
Interestingly, about 6 weeks before municipal election, the mayor calls for an election. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, the qualifying period starts. And the qualifying period is only 2 weeks. So there'll be people running before that, but you don't have your list of candidates until qualification's over. So
there'll be opportunities to. Yeah. We'll be covering more than just the primary and the general, I guess. Thank you, Judy, because it's always. I'm actually really, really glad that they moved the municipal elections to this year for most of the elections, because it wasn't until a couple of years ago that they changed that. And it gives us a little bit more breathing room to try to cover the municipal elections and then focus mostly on the midterms and the state elections. But I guess there's still 6 cities that'll be next year. So the information that was in the first pitch, Roger, if you'll stop the share, I wanted to just get back to seeing everybody. Did anyone have questions about what Roger presented? Any other additional comments or questions? All right. Well, I'm going to stop here and just say what you got in that first package. We'll send out all these slides, but in that first package is really just trying to help us get organized, because if we're really wanting to, I mean, not if, it's not a matter of if, in our effort to get organized, we need to figure out the best way to work together, to collaborate, you know, from a nonpartisan perspective, to get people mobilized, you know, to show up and vote. And when you look at these congressional districts, it's not obvious, you know, where the people are living in these different congressional districts, and where to focus our attention. And there's a lot of information like Dave's redistricting. You could look in there and see where people are actually living, and they break it down by race, by different parameters, so that you can, you know, if you're trying to get organized and turn out the vote, and you want to focus on a certain marginalized community, there are ways to find where we should focus. But that's going to be additional conversations, because obviously we don't have enough capacity to cover the whole state. And there's also partners that we can work with. And then looking at what Roger had with the schedule is really going to be helpful when we start trying to plan our work, because there's a lot that needs to happen, but we need to time it so that people are ready to vote and know how they're going to get to the polls on election day. Beth?
We may want to talk about this for a couple of minutes afterwards, but I was expecting to learn how you go about registering unhoused people.
I can talk to that. I mean, like
if you don't have an address, how do you do that?
Okay. So if you want to take about, I'm done here. I can stay on and I can talk to that right now if you'd like.
Okay. That'd be great for me.
So everybody, I'm going to talk about that right now as far as the process for registering unhoused citizens. And there's also some other aspects as well. And if you want to stay on, you're welcome. And if you don't, then I really appreciate your being here. And we're going to, we'll be back in December for a, really just trying to touch on some of these topics that we need to be ready for in the coming year. And if you have things that you want to hear about, if you would email me, that will help me be able to focus on what we need to cover at these trainings in the next couple of months. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And part of it,
I'm going to pull up the form.
Part of it, Kathy, is I do know some organizations who will feed people once a month or every 2 weeks. And where they're at, they do have tables of resource people, which I thought would just be ideal. There'd be overlap of the populations of the unhoused who would want to see if we could register them or not.
So before I share, I'm gonna come back off. So what you're talking about is the finding opportunities to reach people who.
Well, I think I've got a place identified where people come regularly to be fed, and there may be overlap with people who are unhoused and not registered to vote. So I'm interested in how you would go about it.
Okay. Well, let me show you. I've registered people who are unhoused before,
okay.
and there are some things that are really make it a lot harder. And it's one thing to get them registered, but it's another thing for them to actually get their voting card, and then also get transportation to the polls and get their voter ID. Yeah. But just a moment, I'm gonna pull this up.
Thank you.
All right. And so one of the first things that I do when I'm talking to a person who is unhoused is you want to understand you've got to ask this very tactfully, but you want to understand if they have any question about whether they've got a felony conviction.
Mm-hmm.
And if they do, then you need to look up their record. A lot of times it's not disqualifying, but it's better to check it up front than to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
So then, that would need you to be able to get into Allaport and look up their record and then compare that. If they do have a record, you look at the statute number against the moral turpitude list to see if they are disqualified or not. And if it's serve eligible, then you've got to go through the serve process. But if you assume that they do not have a felony conviction, if you confirm that they don't, then you can go to the voter registration form. And I'm going to pull it up right now and I'll show you how you go about figuring this out. Now, there is a facility up here in Huntsville that provides that allows people who are homeless to use their address to receive the voter mail. One of the things that you need to work with the homeless shelters is to get them to allow, even if if someone's not a client at this place, they can still, for election mail only, they can use their address to get the voter card. Because one of the things you want to do is to make sure they know where to go vote. And so if you do that before you interact with the person that you're helping, then you'll have an address for them to use to get the voter card.
Got it. That's too sure.
So, all right, here we go. I'll figure out too many windows open. All right, so I'm going to open up a voter registration form here. So when you're talking to someone who is unhoused, and this is the standard form that you use, and you go through it just like you would anyone else, but when they're, it's here on block 8, their home address. This is where you put they're homeless. You write the word homeless here and say C block 12. And so now if they're living in an emergency shelter, the question is if they're sleeping at an emergency shelter, that is where they live, because according to the state, voter registration rules, where you lay your head down, where you sleep is where you register to vote. And so this address where you live, if it's an emergency shelter, I have actually put, like the Salvation Army emergency shelters address here. But
excuse me, have you run into any problems with them being gone by the time the voter registration?
That's what I was going to say is if they're not living there, then that is the part that makes this entire process really difficult, because they need to have a reliable place that they can say, I live here, because this is how the registrar is going to define where their voting district is, where they're going to show up to vote and who they vote for. And so if they're down on Seminole Drive, which is, here in Huntsville, then if they're at that address. Otherwise you put homeless, then you drop down. If they're living like under a bridge somewhere, there may or may not be an address. Here in Huntsville, the city has actually defined a street address for a camp. And so if you're fortunate, you have that and you can use that address up here on block 8. But if you don't, and there's, they're living in the woods somewhere, and you say homeless, then you come down here to block 12 and you literally draw where they're at with enough fidelity that someone in the registrar's office can map it onto the voter map. Like if you say that, they're on this street, they're, in the northeast corner of this particular intersection, and this is where they live.
Okay.
And you draw it, it doesn't have to be pretty. Now, another option, you could do that, but you might even, if you could write it really small, is to put like a GPS coordinate, something that actually literally helps them figure out on a map where it is that they're sleeping.
Okay.
And then under block 8 again, where you get your mail, this is where you need to understand or have an agreement with a homeless shelter or some organization that supports the homeless, that you're willing to take, you're willing to get, that they're willing to receive the mail, and that the person who's homeless or unhoused, they need to understand that this is where they need to show up to get their, they need to be able to get to this place to get their mail, because they're going to get a voter card and they need to know what that voter card is for.
Okay.
But they also, this gives the registrar, some people, maybe they've got a friend, you could put a friend's address in this block, but it needs to be a reliable place for them to get their voter card. Also under block 13, you want to put your name and information here, because you're basically helping this person complete this form. And the registrar, I've actually, had the registrar call me, and ask me what is this? And I've actually gotten pushback one time about the fact that they said you can't have a business address as a home place where you live. And I'm like, but it's a homeless shelter, it's where they live. And basically point out to them that, that you said where you sleep is where you vote. That's your voting district. Then that's why you want to make sure they don't call you want to put your name and number here so that they aren't calling these guys at their, a lot of them have a phone that's been provided by an organization. So they don't need to be calling that person asking, giving them the third degree. So that's pretty much the gist of this form. And you do need to, I was going to say, you do need to make sure that you check their rights restoration status if they have anything.
Was there anything there about ID?
That not on that form, but let me go back. I'm going to share that form again one more time. They do need to have an Alabama license or non-driver ID or the last 4 of their social.
Or the last 4 of their social. Okay.
Yeah. And one of the things that here in Huntsville, there is a partnership between the low income housing, there's an organization that supports the homeless. And then there's also a shelter that provides meals and training and stuff. And they've got an effort to provide people with Alabama non-driver IDs. They're working with the So if you can find out who in your community is doing that, there is likely someone doing that already.
Do they need to, let's say they use the last 4 of their social. Is it going to come back like, show me a copy of your social security card?
No.
Okay.
They just need to make sure they know the right number.
Okay.
That they're not just, making up some numbers. Because, they have never done that. Now, whether they might in the future is a good question, but no one checks. They don't come back and check those 4 numbers.
And I guess there'll be like some issues of people not remembering the felony or what it was.
Right.
So probably getting dates would be good too in places.
So if you want, now you do have the capability to, we've got the referral form for the rights restoration, that if you want to use that and then just text it or email it to Brian or myself, then we can get some pretty quick turnaround from our volunteers to check their status.
And that's on your website someplace?
It should be.
Okay, great.
I'll have to get Judy to pull it. But we have provided it in the past, but we'll email, I'll make a note. I'll send it to you.
This is very, very helpful. And
Good.
I have to admit, I do like these meetings. I've learned an awful lot.
Well, and today, I guess I didn't cover that, but it is something that is, I'm glad you asked, because it's, this is something we've done. So we're not reinventing something.
Right.
So, yeah. And one thing I did want to point out is that, they do need a voter ID. If they don't have an Alabama driver's license and they're not able to get one, then they need to get a free voter ID. And that is available from the registrar.
What voter ID?
It's called a free voter ID.
Free voter ID.
Yeah,
okay.
and you can get that from the registrar's office. But there is a form that you have to fill out that let me pull this back up again.
Okay.
If I can figure out where I was. Back. Do you see, this is the Alabama Votes website. It changes the name after you type Alabama Votes, but you see where it says photo voter ID. When you see it says valid forms of ID are listed here, but if you need a free voter ID, they have an application here, which you can make a copy of, because they don't do electronic. You can't fill this out electronically. You got to print it out. You can see, the information that's needed. You have to have proof of your full legal name of date of birth, documentation showing your date of birth, documentation showing that you're an Alabama registered voter, because you can't get this ID until you're registered to vote. But if you don't have an ID, you can't vote. So they're going to, and the thing is, this is going to, once again, whatever address they're using is what needs to show up on this application. The thing I was going to mention is if they were born in Alabama,
yes,
then everything's great. The registrar can access the public health department records to get proof their birth certificate without any cost.
Okay.
If they're born out of state, then it'll be a lot more hoops, I guess. I'm not sure, what we can do to help with that, because
my brother had to get ID, and he was living in Maryland and was born in Texas. It took months.
Yeah. But if they're homeless, unhoused, and they were born here and they want to vote here, then the folks who are doing this form, they will get a copy of the official record.
Okay.
And use it as the proof that's needed.
Okay.
All right. Am I missing? I'm trying to figure out if I'm missing something else related to helping. Oh, the other tough nut to crack is the transportation. And if they move, if they change locations before the election, then if there's enough time, they need to update their voter registration again.
Okay.
But but I think the main thing is you got to figure out this is not going to be easy. If you can figure out a partnership with, a shelter or, a homeless, someone that coordinates the unhoused, then you can make it where you're there as a sort of a partner with it, but not having to organize,
Right.
And one of the things we're talking up here in Huntsville to the people at this shelter is there a way for us to coordinate with other nonprofits to provide a bus that meets at a certain location to take people, from low income housing and who are homeless to get to their polling place.
Okay. So when you said transportation, you meant getting to the polling place and getting to whoever's got their mail. I guess.
Well, that too. And that, there's no real service, provided on that, except what we can set up in our own communities.
Okay.
Trinette, you've had your hand up.
Yes, about the transportation piece. I know during the local elections in Dothan, the candidates arranged for people to get picked up because they wanted people to get to the polls. So, that may also be an option.
Yeah, that's something that you figure that'll be probably pretty organic. I mean, we won't have to get in the middle of that. I did want to mention, since you just reminded me, Trinette, our SB1, lawsuit is still active. And right now we're still able to help people who are Section 208 voters under the Voting Rights Act. But as far as I was trying to find out if an excused absence, if there's an excused absence on the absentee form, if you're not able to get, if you're not able to go vote on election day, that was an excused absence basically. But being unhoused is not the same thing. I mean, that's unfortunately, it's, from all that I've been able to find, that being unable to walk to your polling place and lacking adequate public transportation is not one of the excused absences that's on that form. And that's if somebody knows to ask. I'm just saying, I was thinking that might be a good way to help people, to be able to cast their ballot.
Yeah, I really can't believe they don't have car voting for people who are disabled.
Yeah, well, that was banned after the 2020.
Really? So it was here. They just banned it.
It wasn't. But to make sure we never are able to do it, Wes Allen, when he was a House member, put a bill out to ban curbside voting and ban drop boxes too. So we've got a lot of things that need to be fixed, and it's just because if you're disabled and you put your health at risk by getting out and trying to walk inside and navigating curbs, then that's just, to me, is just inhumane.
Yeah. Okay.
So what else? Anything else?
I like to write this up and then just fly it by you to make sure I've got it correctly, if that would be okay.
Oh yeah, that'd be fine.
And thank you very much, because I don't know what's doable here, but at least I know what I can talk to folks about what's needed and what we can do. And I appreciate, and I think it's great that y'all have gotten this going. I don't know how many people you have registered, but it is good.
Well, that's the other part is, and you probably seen on, some of the efforts we're trying to get each local league to find an easy way to keep track of your progress, because part of what we have to do is to actually find a way that's not real burdensome to keep track of what we're doing, our impact. And like, for example, what Roger does, I just love. It's literally like a tally sheet where he has voter registrations, or online or paper. If we hand out the QR codes, and it's like the old thing about four little tally marks and then a stripe for the fifth.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And then at the end, he's got a stack of forms, or else he hands out stickers and counts stickers. So, you can, but, sometimes when you've got a lot of volunteers, it's hard to keep track of stickers. But if you tell them, mark it on the form, if you hand out this many forms, mark it down. If you hand out 10 forms, just come back and write that number down. And then at the end of the day, we count it all. And that's how, when we can start doing that, then we're going to actually be able to figure out our impact. Because right now it's just kind of random. We're doing a lot of good work, but we're not necessarily able to track it.
Right, and you don't know which efforts are more successful than others, are more effective. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and that's another thing. One of the topics we might want to talk about next month is how to do a mock election, because if you do a mock election, if you can get all the pieces to come together, that is like a fantastic way to get a lot of students registered.
Oh, okay.
It is. So I'm sitting here thinking we got at least 1,100 students registered in 10 days back in 19. And I mean, literally forms. And, but the fact is COVID happened at that point and everything went down. But anyway, we'll do that. We'll talk about that another day. And, I don't have anything else right now. And I'm looking at the comments. Yeah. All right. Thank you all. And we'll have a good Thanksgiving. Yeah, we'll talk.
You too.
We'll talk later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye, y'all.
Bye.